Hello to all our friends out there in the financial advisor group world, and welcome to a special SpaceX edition of Rapid Fire. Welcome, Ben. And I guess we don't do many of these sort of one-offs, especially for something that's drumming up excitement like this, like SpaceX. So, Ben, you excited for today's episode?
Yeah, pretty excited. So there's SpaceX and then there's the lingering OpenAI and Anthropic. So things that we've got a lot of questions about. So anytime we have an uptick in questions, we try to make a video just so everyone, because it not everyone's in the office all at the same time. So hopefully if you have questions about SpaceX or initial public offerings, this video is for you.
Perfect. And I think we'll try to lead into that. And I think, like Ben said, the summer or the late 2026 of IPOs of SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI. And I think this will answer a lot of those questions. And a lot of times, what is an IPO, right? And IPO stands for initial public offering. And it means it's the public's initial chance at buying into something. And as Ben and I were talking about before we got on the video, it's the first time the public has access to invest in something. It doesn't mean you haven't been able to do it before, but typically most companies are private first, right? As we've joked before, you can't go out and buy shares in the financial advisory group, right? We are a private company. It's a decision we make. And a lot of companies are private. There's a benefit. We don't have to report to shareholders. We get to make our own decisions internally. We're not subject to disclosing anything. And a lot of companies in this country are private. And I mean, I guess, Ben, why would you go wait, this whole initial public offering thing? Why would we, if the financial advisory group wanted to go public, why do companies go public?
Yeah, so there's always a trade-off, and the reason I think why a lot don't, I'll start with that, is because there's a ton of uh, reporting requirements, regulatory oversight, um, like basically being subject to the public, the shareholders, the public. So there's always people annoyed at you or maybe happy at you, but you can really never please the public. The reason why people like that doesn't sound fun. So the reason why people would go about that is because it's access to money.
Yeah.
Companies want to grow. A lot of times it's smaller companies that have this massive growth plan, and it's not easy to just go to a bank and get billions of dollars. So what they do is they offer shares to the public. So they raise equity, they raise cash. Basically, people are buying their shares, so then they have a bunch of capital that they can go and deploy however they want to do it. That's one thing SpaceX is doing. They have grand plans, not super profitable, so there's not a lot of cash internally, so they have to go out and right now, before they're public, they're going to private markets, and then they'll be accessing even more capital once they go public.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the way to make this sounds so complicated, but it's basically the company needs money, right? And when the company needs money and they don't have enough themselves, they have options. And a lot of times when we explain this, it's like the show Shark Tank. What is the number one thing people want when they go to Shark Tank? Money, right? Yes, they want a shark, but they're also trying to get an influx of capital because they want to spend that money on something and they don't have the funds to do it. So you can go to private markets, and and this is something I guess as we lead into this is, a new trend is these companies tend to stay private longer because there's so much money in the private market space today. So companies like SpaceX, there's a lot of people who have already invested in SpaceX, a lot. There's a lot of people already invested in Anthropic. There's a lot of people already invested in AI, or sorry, in OpenAI. It's all been held private so far. This now is the first time they're now becoming, instead of going to Shark Tank and saying, hey, Mark Cuban, will you invest? They're literally now going to the public and saying, now we're giving you the opportunity. And I think that's something we just have to keep in mind is that this isn't the first offering, right? We're way down the line in sort of getting access to this. And usually when you're later in the access point, it's not necessarily the best option, right? So we'll get into that in a little bit, but it's really think of this as Shark Tank. Is SpaceX going out and saying, hey, who wants to buy into us? Here's our plans. We want to take this $75 billion and we have set plans of what we want to do with it. And now we're the sharks. We get to decide if we want to be invested in that or not. So I guess from that perspective, Ben, I'll throw that over to you. Right now that we talked about what an initial public offering is, it's the idea of bringing cash into my company. We'll throw that over. You're a shark. Are you interested? Like, should we all jump into SpaceX at this point? I think this is awesome, right? We should all buy IPOs. Is that sort of the general gist?
That's how it feels. I will say there's so many advertisements, there's so much hype. So you can call it a hype trade, the FOMO, fear of missing out. But it's hard to not be interested. There's again, SpaceX is cool if you know the story, know what they want to do. But it's one of those things I almost know too much. So his historical, Damien and I, we're data people. We like charts, we like graphs. So I'll show you one that doesn't look too pretty, and a reason why we're not too excited, chomping at the bit to buy right away. These are some of the largest initial public offerings of late. So a lot of these you would recognize. You have Rivian, Cars, Tesla's one competitor, but a lot of those, Facebook, Twitter, and the core theme is a lot of red. There's not a whole lot of black. I mean, there might be some, like if you look at short term, and remember, we're always long term looking, so it's kind of the flip of what you would like to see. It's short term kind of good, long term kind of bad. There's a lot of, you maybe a short-term blip, but it's hard to know how it's going to perform over time. And you can see the drawdowns are massive. So within 12 months, so let's say SpaceX goes public next week, within 12 months, you can see the average drawdown, 1 year drawdown is 55%. And there's none of those companies that didn't have double-digit drawdowns sometimes. So there's some that within 12 months they did have growth, but they suffered a massive drawdown. And that's volatility it's tough to take on as investors as we're trying to plan and we want long-term expected growth rates. This isn't things, it's hard to expect a reasonable growth rate for some of these.
And I think two key parts of this, right? If someone asks, which we've gotten that a fair amount this last couple of weeks, is should we invest in SpaceX? One of the first things back is like, if you put $1 in something, are you willing for it to be worth 45 cents 6 months from now and still hold on to it, right? Because we need to answer that question, because with these IPOs, that's likely to happen. That when you jump into these things, at some point there will be a fallback. And are you comfortable with that dollar being worth 50 cents in 6 months? It may come back to being worth $1.50 3 years later, but are you strong enough to stomach that initial drawdown? And the other part that's important is you can have good companies that aren't good stocks. This is so crucial, right? You can love SpaceX, right? Because the idea of SpaceX is so cool. They talk about going to space and this, but it doesn't mean it's a great investment. So I think that's important to separate, is that in this, they talk about this again on Shark Tank all the time, is you can have an awesome idea. It doesn't mean I want to invest in it. So I think that's the thing that we need to differentiate here, is these are great ideas, but it doesn't mean we should all be rushing to the door to invest. And I think it's so crucial that 20 years ago when these companies came public, they came early and you got to be an early investor. We're not early on SpaceX, right? We are one of the later entrants here, and they typically don't give the best offerings out to the public, right? The public sort of get the scraps, if you would.
Yeah, and I think it's important even just to show how different SpaceX is. So again, it's trending. We're getting towards this later stage. So you can see SpaceX, the amount that they're raising is just substantially different. It's like multiples different, like 3x, 4x from even the largest since 2000 of Visa. So yeah, it's different. Again, it's later stage. So you also run the risk of a bunch of people that have been locked up in the private investment world, because it's if you own just, the S&P 500, anything public, any company in the S&P 500, at any point you can sell it. But private companies, it's not easy to just say like, hey, I'm in this private investment, I want to liquidate it. But once they go public, that's an opportunity for the people that were in the private world, or just long-term employees, long-term executives. This is their time that they can also sell. So again, being a later stage does present some more risks, even though it is a more established company as well. So there's kind of both sides, but just wanted to give some perspective on how different SpaceX is and how it is trending in that direction as well, with OpenAI and Anthropic coming up as well.
And I think that's key as we sort of wrap up here that I think whether it's SpaceX, whether it's Anthropic, whether it's OpenAI, these are all fantastic companies, right? They're all in areas that the growth is unbelievable. We just have to understand that it doesn't mean it's the right thing for us to buy into right away. If the price falls, maybe. But again, I think when you're the last one that gets an option to buy into something, usually that's not the best thing, right? You wanted to be someone on early, and none of these are we getting the first best offering. And I think it's really important to differentiate between a great company versus a great investment. And I think that's what we'd say. And I think it's hard sometimes, Ben, right, to avoid the hype of, oh my God, this is SpaceX. Keep in mind, SpaceX today as a company is losing money hand over fist. So if you're buying it today, it's because you believe what it's going to be 10 years from now is greater than we think. And it might be, but just make sure we go back to that question. If you're asking us, should we buy SpaceX? If we took $1 of yours today and it was worth 50 cents 6 months later, are you okay with that? I think we need to answer that question before it's okay if we invest in it. So Ben, I guess all that being said, are you buying SpaceX on Friday when it goes public?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to disclose, but no, I don't. And Damien knows this. I am an adamant not stock picker. Stuff that I enjoy. Like I love tracking companies, but I try to separate my wants, my behavioral stuff, and just like knowing long term, it just makes sense to diversify, scatter my money out, pick the best companies in like an index fund rather than trying to find the next Nvidia.
Yep, and I'd agree. Same, even though we're not allowed to disclose a lot of this stuff, it's the same thing. It's again, I think watch SpaceX, don't necessarily invest in it unless you're willing to shoulder that volatility. So again, just wanted to give a little brief thing. Again, real brief wrap up here of an initial public offering is the first time they have initial availability for the public to buy something. That doesn't mean it's the first time you can access it because private markets have been accessing this for a long time. So when you're usually last in line to pick at something, right, that doesn't mean you're getting the best price. So we just need to keep that in mind. And the volatility that comes with owning some of these companies is very severe. And we need to make sure if you want to buy it, you're comfortable with that. So again, quick intro into this. We'll have an interesting summer because there's more lined up. Anthropic already did their initial sort of testing that they're coming public, same with OpenAI, and we'll keep an eye on it. It gives us fun conversation. It doesn't mean we want to buy into it.
Yeah. So if you have any further questions, always reach out. You can wait for your meeting or send us an email, put a comment, whatever, and we'll get back to you.
All right. Well, we'll check out here. And I think SpaceX officially goes public this Friday, just a couple days away. Exciting times. Again, questions, we'd love to talk about it. But thank you as always for being a rapid fire watcher. And don't forget to share us around and subscribe to our channel.